Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to our webinar series, Drapers Connect. My name is Graham Moran, and I am the Associate Editor here at Drapers. Thank you all for joining us. In partnership with Jaw, today we will be discussing powering sustainability progress with Selfridges and Pangaia. So thank you to our panel for joining us. I'll let you all take a moment to introduce yourselves. Ella, could we please start with you? Oh, I'm not sure if she can hear us. Rory, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Graham. I'm Rory Hugill, the Senior Innovation Portfolio Manager here at Pangaia. So what that means is I work in the integrated innovation and impact function that we have here and help to drive the strategy forward. Just quickly, for those that might not be aware of Pangaia, we're a relatively young brand, about 4 or 5 years old, and ultimately we're a material science company that's really trying to bring problem-solving innovations to the industry through lifestyle products.
Ella, should we try again?
Sorry, guys. Great way to start with connection issues. Hi, I'm Ella. I head up sustainability and innovation at Selfridges. My role covers everything from our net zero strategy, our transition to circular business models, responsible sourcing, and then how we work with our partners, team members, and customers to change the way that we shop and the way that we do business.
Perfect, thank you. Amanda, over to you. Could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Jaw?
Hi, everybody. My name is Amanda McCormick-Bacall. I'm the Senior Vice President of Marketing at Jour, and Jour is the fashion industry's leading digital wholesale platform. We connect brands and retailers, and we digitize and improve that whole process of how brands and retailers work together on their wholesale buying and selling. That means everything from the way that brands present their collections digitally to how they work with buyers to build their assortments, to finalizing and placing orders, and ultimately all the way through payment. We have a very vast network of more than 14,000 brands and 635,000 buyers around the world who use the platform, transacting nearly $20 billion on an annual basis. And I think given the scale of our network, we have a unique vantage point on the what's happening in the industry, and sustainability has obviously been one of those very important topics that we've been engaged in with our partners, such as Selfridges and Pangaia. So very happy to be here today to join the discussion.
Excellent. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you also to those who are joining us live. If you are, please feel free to ask any questions you might have for our panel via the Q&A function, and we'll do our best to answer them throughout. So now introductions are over, let's get started. No matter where your brand or business is on its sustainability journey, now is the time to act. Whether big or small, fashion brands and retailers must find ways to work together to drive action and innovation forward. But with that change comes challenges. So my first question to you, Ella, if you had to highlight one challenge in Selfridges' efforts to operate more sustainably, what would it be? And how did you, or how are you, attempting to overcome that?
Thanks, Graham. That point around partnership is so key. And if you think about Selfridges' business model, we work with a huge number of partners of different sizes across different parts of your sort of luxury fashion retail value chain. And a lot of them are on very different stages of their business. We know that to reach our goals, we need to work really, really closely with all of those partners to come on the journey together. I guess the challenge for us is that, like I said, they're all at really different stages. They're all approaching things in slightly different ways. And if I take things like traceability as a really topical example, given a lot of the legislation that's coming in, a lot of them are using different tools, they're capturing data in different ways, it might still be really, really manual. And so our challenge is how we adapt and how we can bring all of that information and collect it in a really scalable and seamless way. And we've had amazing examples of success with these brand partners in, I guess, one a kind of carrot and a stick. So we've issued a really open invitation to all of our brands to come and collaborate, experiment, trial different things in this space. And on the flip side, on occasion, we have mandated certain changes. We are in the process at the moment of redoing our beauty hall. And one of the criteria for the new beauty spaces for each brand was to have a refillable and refill product offer. And we've really seen the brands embrace that challenge and take us up on it. And it's really been fantastic to see.
Thank you. Rory, what about one of your biggest challenges at Pangaia?
Yeah, it's a difficult question because I guess Pangaia in its very existence and foundation is trying to overcome the most pressing challenges in the industry, and that's what we're trying to do is displace the ubiquitous materials that currently exist. And so what I mean by that kind of fluffy sentence is, we think about cotton that relies on monocropping that has detrimental environmental impacts. We think about fossil fuel usage. So 70% of all the materials that are put on the market come from plastic. There's other issues of animal cruelty from cashmere and wool, etc. And so what we're trying to do at Pangaia is find alternatives to those ubiquitous materials that are good for the planet and good for people. And so, there are challenges that we face all the time in trying to do this. It's really trying to rewrite a supply chain and operate in quite a different way. There's issues of kind of scalability of some of these solutions. There's issue of price. There's issue of performance. And hopefully we can get into this conversation some of the ways in which we're trying to mitigate against that and kind of co-create solutions with the industry to drive forward the acceleration of new materials.
Thank you, Rory. Amanda, as you said, your work with thousands of brands across the fashion industry. What are you hearing in terms of the big challenges in this space?
I think that actually two of the biggest challenges that we hear were lightly touched on in Rory and Ella's comments as well. I think brands and retailers today recognize the importance of this topic, and they also recognize the ever increasing importance in the consumer's mind and their decision making. So there's an interest in making progress, but there are a lot of challenges, and it's obviously a complex issue. I think two that come to mind. So one is as brands and retailers want to make progress on their sustainability objectives, they have to do so in a way that also allows them to maintain a cost structure that for their business and their products that allows them to run a viable and successful business model. So I think there's a reality to that is certainly a challenge. I think the other is something that Ella touched on, that right now there's a lack of standardization in terms of what is considered sustainable. And so I think for brands and retailers, that can be difficult because they don't necessarily know exactly what to prioritize, or different companies could be prioritizing different things. And on the consumer side, it can sometimes even cause a little confusion as to, even with the best of intentions and wanting to make informed decisions, there's not always clarity around which approaches are actually the most beneficial or which ones are having the greatest positive impact. So I think that kind of lack of a common definition as to what is sustainable, is certainly one of the challenges in the industry.
Thank you, Amanda. Interesting. I always like to start with a kind of context question like that. And as Amanda noted, there are definitely overlaps. So it feels like there's a lot of challenges, but there are also a lot of shared opportunities, which I'm sure we'll get to. Ella, I'm personally super interested in the re-commerce space, and I know a key focus for you at Selfridges is your Reselfridges project. I had to practice saying Reselfridges project. Could you tell us a bit about this and kind of what the opportunity is within this space?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you who may not know, in 2020, we set a number of different targets. One of as part of our Project Air strategy. One of those was that 45% of our transactions would come from circular products and services by 2030. We define circular as keeping items and valuable resources in circulation for longer, and thinking about how you start to make viable, long-term, sustainable business from not just selling new stuff. At the moment, we're really focused on resale, repair, refill, rental, and recycle. And there's a host of other, not all starting with but models that are a part of the kind of criteria and tenets that we set behind that we will explore over the next few years. For me, we know obviously that circular and not creating new things is a better, less invasive option for the planet, but it's also a huge commercial opportunity. It is so intrinsically linked to what I would call customer circularity, loyalty, building a community, having a customer come and transact and interact with you more frequently. A really great example there being, if I think about something that Selfridges sells quite a lot of, take a handbag. If we sell a customer a handbag and they can come and repair that handbag with us, have it cleaned and updated so they can keep it for longer, we're seeing them again. That customer can sell that handbag back to us in exchange for a gift card. We can then offer that handbag to another customer. And so you really start to see over time kind of that top line benefit from that, I guess, engaging those customers in a different way. It definitely does require you to slightly broaden how you think about success. So those metrics being about customer loyalty, visits, you're also measuring that impact over time, which is a really big mindset shift. And so I think it's really important to make sure you have the data that can support that. But they very much, that customer loyalty and circularity really go hand in hand.
Thank you, Ella. I love that idea of customer circularity as well as product circularity. It's yeah, very interesting. Rory, over at Pangaia, it is obviously a brand focused on innovation. And I love exploring your website and discovering kind of the new materials that you've come up with, some of which that caught my eye include kind of a goose or duck feather down replacement made from wildflowers, or a leather alternative made from grapes, which are obviously super innovative and kind of at the forefront of material science as well. But for people listening, they might seem out of reach, or for a small brand even, it might be how can we use such techy, innovative, and expensive sounding materials. How accessible is this level of innovation?
Yeah, it's interesting. We get this question a lot, and kind of reflecting, it's important to know we are a relatively small brand. We're a very young brand, as I said, kind of 4 or 5 years old, and this has really been in our core for a while. And I actually think that smaller brands often have somewhat of an advantage in this space. They have the ability to be very agile and try things in a new way that hasn't been done previously, and you don't necessarily have to subscribe to a norm that the industry may have set. And so I think our size has actually, contributed to our success with regards to innovation. And I think what we've been able to do with that size is, really focus on creating partnerships and relationships with key supply chain partners, key innovators, key other industry actors that allow us to kind of problem solve and get these things through and commercialize new innovations. So I really think it's about, even if you're a small brand, identifying other partners that want to collaborate with you on this journey, have the same kind of innovation appetite and sustainability desires, and then kind of co-create something that is greater than the sum of its parts. But you're right in identifying that there is a challenge. Sometimes with small scale means it's a high price point, and so there's a whole piece there around kind of educating consumers on the importance and the exciting aspect of innovation that's inherent to a lot of the work that we do. And the final thing I'd say is that accessibility is really, really important to us. As I said, we really want to displace ubiquitous materials, and we recognize that as a small brand, we only have a limited opportunity to do so. And so we want to democratize this. And with that, we have a B2B arm that we work with lots of brands within the industry and outside of the industry to help them on that journey, provide materials, provide other solutions to them as well. So, we're kind of trying to solve that issue in multiple different ways.
Thank you. Amanda, we've touched on Ella's great example of customer circularity. We touched on the customer a few times, but you could argue that we see somewhat conflicting consumer behaviors where maybe they say they have these beliefs or they have these values, but their actions, or particularly their shopping behaviors, don't always align with that. Do customers really care? And how are you seeing brands and retailers kind of respond to this behavior? Quite a pointed question.
I think that as awareness of environmental and social issues that are tied to sustainability, as that awareness continues to increase, I do think that sustainability is becoming an increasingly important topic to customers. In particular, there have been a lot of studies showing how amongst younger audiences in particular, it really is something that they are invested in and is part of how they make decisions. I think what's happening is that buyers within the industry are responding accordingly, both because they want to fulfill consumer demand and also because they want to lead in offering sustainable options. But that is something we actually survey our buyers on a regular basis within our network. And one of the questions that we ask is, when you're looking at adding a brand to your assortment or to your store, what are the factors that you're considering and what's most important, or the things that you're looking for? And that can be anything from wanting to keep up with trends or wanting to have differentiated product within the store. And one of the things that we ask is, are you interested in looking for sustainable resources? And what we've seen is that over the last several years, so 2021, 2022, 2023, that kept increasing, where buyers were increasingly looking for sustainable resources. Then in 2023, we actually saw it take a dip for a little bit. And I think that is likely due to when the economic environment becomes more challenging, and you have sort of a retail environment that can be challenging, then it's hard to keep things like sustainability front and center. There's a lot of other kind of competing factors that sometimes are prioritized. But what's encouraging is that actually this year, in the survey that we did the beginning of 2024, that interest level in sustainability has come back, which is great. And it's also interesting to note that it's different based on different regions of the world. So when we look at buyers from Europe, that interest level in sustainability as one of the things they're looking for is higher than when we look at buyers from APAC or North America. So it's just interesting to note that different regions could be at different levels within the spectrum.
Super interesting. Thank you, Amanda. A reminder to those watching live, if you do have any questions for our panel, please do send them in, and we'll do our best to answer all that are relevant. A point that I also wanted to discuss today is the impact of digital and technology and data in particular, and how this aligns with brands and retailers making better business decisions, both from a business point of view, but also from this sustainability point of view, and doing better business in both senses. Ella, how is digital impacting change at Selfridges?
Yeah, massively. I think there's a number of different things all happening at the same time. So on one hand, to Amanda's point, you've got customers who really care, and we know that from all of the studies, our own surveys, etc., that customers are looking for ways to make better choices, and they want to be helped and supported by making those better choices. And I guess on the other side of that, you then also have a host of legislation and kind of an increasingly rapidly rising floor of legislation. And you look at France, I think, is a really great example where I think they're leading the way in terms of the levels of legislation with the likes of AGEC that they've already brought into place, connecting us to the provenance, be it the materials, the factories of those products. And technology and digital is critical. And digitizing those supply chains, for example, is going to be, I think, completely transformative. What that information then also does, the way that that's being put onto the blockchain, part of it is about transparency, traceability, but what that then does for end of life, what it does for circular economy, resale, and also what it does for a brand's ongoing interaction and access to that customer from kind of a CRM 2.0 perspective. So it's great from that transparency, traceability, legislation and compliance, but there's also really interesting elements of this in terms of customer interaction and circular economy that are kind of all bundled into one. So yeah, really excited to see how this space evolves.
Amanda, how are you seeing technology impact brands and retailers in this space?
I think that digitizing your processes has a very there's a lot of alignment with sustainability. What we've seen from our clients is that adopting a platform like Jour allows them to reduce their travel. So they kind of immediately see an impact there because they're able to work virtually with buyers who are around the world. The other thing that has been the feedback that we've gotten is that they are able to reduce their sample production. So eliminating some waste in that regard because they no longer need to have multiple sample sets in various different regions or shipping them back and forth. I think that they are reducing paper printing. So just the sort of historic way of wholesale printing huge line sheets that, is eliminated by kind of digitizing the process. So I think there's some very tangible aspects of it that allow you to operate more efficiently. But I think the other part of it is using technology allows you to have real-time data to inform your business decision making. So it allows you to improve your forecasting. You have a clearer picture on your orders and how they roll up across channels. So when you're thinking about things like materials purchasing, it allows you to optimize your production by just having greater visibility and then hopefully as an outcome of that being able to reduce waste. So I think that there's several ways in which technology and data can help brands and retailers kind of progress towards their sustainability goals. It also is just a platform for being able to provide information between the brand and the retailer to, help inform that process of decision making.
I think that it sounds very simple, but that kind of the information piece is really important. I know Rory and we spoke about how important this is to bringing transparency to your supply chain, because if you don't know, then you're never going to know. And that kind of like information platform is so important. Rory, could you tell us a bit more about that from your point of view?
Yeah, absolutely. And echoing a lot of the sentiment shared, especially by Ella, but transparency and traceability into the supply chain are a huge issue in the fashion industry. It's an incredibly fragmented supply chain that's relatively opaque in certain areas. And from a brand's perspective, we obviously want to have a better understanding, a better visibility into that to then be able to make more informed decisions from environmental and socially as well. And where we've used digital tools and this is very much work in progress is trying to digitalize our supply chain and thinking about these digital platforms that now exist that help us to map our supply chain, both at kind of our direct suppliers, but then understand their suppliers and their suppliers and their suppliers, ideally going all the way back to farm level until we have full visibility in our supply chain. And then we can begin to, trace key kind of chain of custody documents, whether that be certification or other kind of key bits of information through that supply chain to, as Ella said, to kind of ensure compliance with the increasing number of regulations that are coming into the industry, but also allow us to just make much better informed decisions as a business that's operating globally.
I feel like this space can be quite intimidating to businesses that are kind of taking their first steps towards making change. Do you think that the whole idea of digitalizing is helpful? It makes it easier, to understand and kind of do the right thing? Rory.
Yeah, I think it is intimidating because the industry is actually predicated on quite manual, somewhat antiquated process when it comes to understanding your supply chain. So it's intimidating in terms of like getting started. But what I would say is that you very quickly are able to demonstrate the benefits of digitalizing to various functions within the business. And as soon as you have that and you're able to kind of have that cross-functional approach, you're able to achieve the scale that you want quite quickly. So as we're here, like, you know, it's very relevant from an impact and innovation perspective, but just as much our wholesale and retail partners and our merchandising teams, etc. So once you're able to demonstrate the opportunity that lies within with regards to digitalization, I actually think it becomes a much easier and notable endeavor.
I guess in terms of we've been discussing elements of the wholesale market, and Rory, you mentioned kind of elements of the industry that are set up on kind of quite antiquated ways. So I know, you know, international trade shows and fashion weeks and having showrooms all around the world and shipping samples all over the world, that it isn't necessarily the most sustainable way of operating, but it is how particularly the wholesale industry, the wholesale market has operated for many years. I know it is changing for the better, but Amanda, could you tell us some of the ways?
Yeah, I think that what you're describing is exactly what Jour was disrupting in terms of kind of the traditional way of that wholesale process of buying and selling. So I think a lot of the things that we've mentioned in terms of how digital can change those practices are part of the benefits of kind of leveraging technology today. And fortunately, there has been a real acceleration of the adoption of technology in the last several years. So I think brands and retailers both are recognizing the benefits of being able to work together in a more digital capacity. So some of those things that we mentioned, you know, reduced travel and sample production and things like that, for sure. I would say, though, that Jour, in addition to kind of changing that wholesale process and injecting it with greater efficiency, we are also doing a number of other things to help encourage sustainable business practices and to raise the visibility of brands that are sustainable. So a great example of that is we have a digital destination called Jour Passport, where we work with partners on extending and presenting digital events, or we curate our own digital events. And we have one currently that's called Sustainability in Focus, where we are highlighting 140 brands that are on Jour that are sustainable brands and wanting to drive traffic to this destination to encourage buyers to explore these brands and consider these types of sustainable resources. So things like that. I would say another great example is on the platform, there's a tool called Find New Brands that buyers can use to explore and discover brands. And within that, there's the ability to filter by eco-friendly and sustainable resources. So really trying to do what we can as that point of intersection between brands and retailers to help raise the visibility of brands that are investing in and really, you know, making progress in sustainable production.
Thank you, Amanda. To To your point about how Draw is connecting brands and retailers within this, that you know that are more sustainable brands that are working in this space to buyers who may be looking for those kind of brands. I'm interested in seeing how sustainability concerns are beginning to impact how the wider industry operates, and in some ways, how brands can or even allowed to operate within the wider industry. For example, trade shows or fashion weeks kind of limiting access to brands' involvement based upon their environmental impacts. I know Copenhagen Fashion Week is an example that springs to mind, who, if you don't match up to their impact scores, then you're literally not allowed to take part. That is obviously going to drive change, but also give challenges to both brands and retailers and bodies, etc. And I know, Ella, Selfridges are already kind of championing this. I know in your Project Earth report, you said that by 2030, every product that you offer within your stores must meet your environmental and ethical standards through your material commitments and supplier and brand self-assessment framework. That will definitely impact the brands that can work with Selfridges. I'm really interested to hear more about that approach and kind of any advice you have for brands out there listening to that, because it is a challenge to them. It's a very noble challenge, but yeah, I'm super interested.
Absolutely. I mean, I think what's fantastic is that those commitments are building on a really long history of what we call retail activism at Selfridges. So we were one of the first luxury partners to ban fur. We banned exotic skins, glitter, through Project Ocean, etc. And this goes all the way back to kind of your early 2000s in terms of the stance that the company has taken. It is very much, like I said, a work in progress. We do rely heavily on third-party certifications in terms of having an external vetted standard. We don't want to be sort of marking our own homework per se, but it's also a space that's moving and changing all the time, you know, whether that's new certifications, whether it's certifications that are looking not just at the origin of that material, but go further to the processing, the products, the dye, looking at chemicals, water, biodiversity. So I guess part of me does think that that will expand over time. And I think it's an area where I certainly feel really energized, because so many of our major brand partners have made commitments around materials. You know, it really, really is a huge, huge focus in the fashion space to, effectively, you know, taking leather as your example, chrome-free dyeing, the likes of Leather Working Group, alternative materials, etc. So I think it's a really, really exciting space. I do think it's one that brands have embraced with gusto and are absolutely focusing a lot of effort and resource on, and are also making commitments of their own, which ultimately are really aligned.
I think it also builds in some form of accountability as well. You know, you can make these claims, and obviously it's not about hitting or missing, it's about getting as far as you can. But I do think that it kind of gives this element of accountability, because if everyone's kind of striving for the same goal, then, you know, the people who aren't are going to get left behind, and maybe that's a good thing. Rory, what's your view on this?
Yeah, I think I look at it in a slightly more kind of macro level, you know, thinking about those industry drivers that are accelerating the progress to a more sustainable industry. And I think the most pertinent one that Ella also touched on is regulation. Regulation holds a huge amount of potential to accelerate this, either through the kind of carrot or the stick, you know, through incentives or through more like punitive measures. And I think what we're seeing is actually some very kind of interesting, quite exciting and progressive approaches to this. Again, referencing France as a kind of leader in this space, you know, one very tangible example is they introduced something called eco-modulated fees, which is the notion that you pay a smaller contribution towards your extended producer responsibility, which all brands and retailers have for operating in the French market, if your products meet certain sustainability requirements. So if you can demonstrate that your products have been made kind of with durability in mind, or integrating recycled materials, or more generally just certified materials, you pay a smaller contribution to that EPR fee. And so, things like this help to balance out and counteract some of those price premiums that might exist on a material level when you're thinking about the cost of goods sold to the customer. So I think we can't overstate the importance of regulation in this space, to be honest.
Okay, thank you, Rory. Amanda, how are you seeing this kind of, not to call it a push and pull, but the progress that some in the industry are making, and the impact that's going to have on brands wanting to continue to work with certain retailers or certain businesses? How are you seeing that impact brands, and what advice might you have?
I think that I would encourage brands to provide as much information as possible on their certifications and on the work that they're doing. It sort of goes back to what we were saying earlier about transparency. As buyers are prioritizing sustainable criteria, they need the information to be able to inform their product investment decisions. So I think given that Jour is in this position, sort of at the intersection between brand and retailer, we can act as a conduit to provide that information. But I think it sort of goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the call, that ultimately, until there is some standardization of sort of how we define sustainability, or which credentials to consider, it remains challenging to be able to provide the right information from one to the other. So, I think that remains one of the big factors. And then at the same time, I think that's what I would encourage brands and retailers to collaborate on in order to move forward in a really productive manner.
Definitely, I agree. Thank you, Amanda. Now, there's a lot, we talked a lot about the brand and retailer, the industry relationship and collaboration. But to talk about the consumer, there is a lot of talk and communication and marketing around sustainability efforts, which is great, but it's also a lot for consumers to kind of take in and digest, and maybe even learn about some of these things for the first time. I'm really interested to know if there are any specific areas or initiatives that have really resonated with consumers. They've really connected with them. Because I guess that at the end of the day, we want to connect and resonate with the shoppers out there. Is there anything that's really stuck with them, or is it just a great product at the end of the day will catch their attention? Rory, I know we discussed this. You guys do great things in this space, but you also do great products. And what is it that's really capturing the attention of your customers?
Yeah, I think we're in a pretty good position to answer this, given the kind of large data of various products that we've tried over the years. And it's kind of goes without saying that something like a recycled product might resonate more with the consumer than a microbial fermentation process. It's not immediately apparent what that means. So the areas that I'd pull out are those in which, as I say, we're able to, it's very accessible, very digestible, and the consumer feels that they understand the kind of benefits they're bringing. And recycled product, continues to have to perform well for us and be a huge kind of strategic area for us, both from a product perspective and, an environmental impact perspective. That the savings are very clear. And I think, even within the recycled category, there's some kind of myths. I'd go as far to say that recycled products are of a lower quality, for example, and that's where the product piece really comes in. We're trying to create product that demonstrates that by using recycled material, you're not compromising on the finished product, and actually you can continue to create great things with that. I think the other area that's really resonated with our consumers is we launched a platform called Pangaia Rewear about 6 to 9 months ago now, which is our brand-owned peer-to-peer resale platform to enable customers to buy and sell their old Pangaia products, obviously hoping that they extend the life cycle of their items and get more use out of them. I think, those kind of platforms resonate very well because we're really trying to create the digital infrastructure to allow our customers to resell our products and reduce the kind of barriers to entry or any kind of friction that might exist in that process and make it as seamless as possible. So again, I think that notion of reuse and re-commerce and reselling is relatively well known now. And so by providing what we believe is a good solution to that, we can really increase the use of those platforms.
Super interesting. Thank you, Rory. Ella, I know you also have lots of thoughts on this. Could you share your thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we're in a really fortunate position where being this sort of creative playground is such an inherent part of our brand ethos. And so we apply that same thinking to everything that we do particularly in the circular space. Last year, we actually dedicated an entire season to circularity, which we called Worn Again. And we had a number of activations in that time. And one of the ones that I think most captured the hearts and minds of our customers was our corner shop. So we transformed the corner shop into a stock exchange, and it was all around that long-term value and circularity of your products. So we had sneakers cleaning with our partner Sneakers ER. We had incredible Sojo in doing repairs. We had the handbag clinic doing buyback and kind of bag repairs, and as well as upcyclers to turn items into completely new products as well. And the response from customers was amazing, and it was something that was really exciting. They responded to it really well. It, I guess, was a bit of an inversion of some of those big capitalist tropes, so it was really fun to play on that. And I guess off the back of that has led us to do a lot of thinking internally about how we brand, how we talk about sustainability, how do we ensure that we're really elevating it, making it really exciting, and also making it feel really luxurious, as opposed to any lesser than buying something lovely and new.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. I think it is one of those interesting things of I guess my pointed question earlier of do customers care? I think they do. It's just how it's communicated, and it's really interesting to see brands and businesses like yourselves doing it in such interesting ways. I think that's what's exciting about this space as well, is everyone's trying new things and trying different things, which is great. But speaking of that, Pangaia is built on innovation and trial and error, I guess, and I'm sure there are successes and failures. That can be very difficult for a brand or a business that's not as agile as you, maybe like Selfridges. So we'll come to Ella afterwards. What advice do you have, Rory, in terms of trying or trial and error or giving things a try? And as you sort of touched on earlier, you kind of proving to the company that the powers that be that this is worth the investment, maybe, or this is worth a try. Do you have any advice around that?
Yeah, I think you touched on a few really key points there, and it is worth just kind of reiterating that there is lots and lots of trial and error, and it sounds quite cheesy, but that's really part of the process of innovation, and we strongly believe that there's learnings that you can take from any failure and help you to then succeed in the long term. And the other thing, Graham, that you mentioned that I think is worth highlighting is kind of managing expectations across the business as early as you can. That what we're trying may not succeed, and that's fine if we're thinking in the long term and more strategically around innovation and disrupting this industry, kind of building that joint recognition and understanding across the industry as wide as possible, I think goes a long way too. And then I think just to kind of come back to something I said earlier, which is really key to, I think, driving innovation around establishing partnerships with those in the industry, those innovators, those early stage companies, maybe supply chain partners that are really help to enable the commercialization and industrialization of these kinds of things. That's really key. As one brand, you can't do it alone. You need to establish those partnerships to make it possible.
Great, thank you. Ella, from your point of view, obviously Selfridges has been around for many years and it's a very well-established business. I'm sure it's quite tricky to make them do, well, maybe not actually, but for some businesses out there that have been around for as long as you are, it's hard to get buy-in from, to get investment, to get things done differently. How are you tackling that challenge?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, again, we're in a very fortunate position where Selfridges' vision and purpose is to reinvent retail and to create a more sustainable future for people and planet. And so all of this space ladders up to that ultimate vision. So we're really lucky to have incredible support and buy-in from the business. I echo a lot of what Rory said around failing fast, being willing to try new things. And I think the most important thing is to know what are those measures of success, and how are you influencing those, and how are you making fast decisions of where something is going well, to plan, not to plan. Are you able to pivot, or do you just need to deprioritize and kind of go back to the drawing board? Going into it with that buy-in, being really open that is the case. Incubating things, starting really small is also, I think, is really great. And to Rory's point, that partnership, we've been so fortunate to work with some incredible partners. It's something that we take very seriously, and I think echoing, as we do on the buying side of our business, where we really have that strong history of championing emerging designers, minority designers, British designers, etc. We feel very strongly about doing that on our circular partner side as well. If I take our fantastic rental partner, Her, for example, we've been working with them since 2019 when they were really just starting out. Sojo is another example in repair. And we feel very strongly about how we can both apply our unique cases for them to learn and grow, but also use our platform to really promote those models and products that we really believe in.
Definitely. Amanda, collaboration and partnership and working together is definitely kind of central to Jaw, I would say. Could you tell us a little bit about that and kind of any advice you have? We're talking about collaboration is key, and I think that's a really nice point to kind of wrap this part up on. Do you have anything to add?
Sure. I was actually thinking about that as Rory was speaking, and he made the comment about the importance of partnerships. I think especially for a topic like this is something that won't be solved by a single brand or a single retailer. It's something that really does require the collaboration across the industry to be able to make change. So, I think that we certainly recognize the importance of that, and given our network, what we're trying to do is really foster the conversation. So being part of discussions like this and dialogue with the brands and retailers that we work with is the best way for us to surface where there's exciting opportunity and where people are seeing progress and are finding that it's resonating with consumers. And then ultimately, helping to provide that information and to encourage the opportunity for collaboration across the industry.
Thank you, Amanda. Now we're going to try and answer some audience questions. So thank you for everyone who has sent some in. There was a really interesting question I thought when we were talking about the digital side of things and how that is impacting business decisions, particularly in sustainability. Somebody has asked about technology that's maybe more consumer facing that can also impact in a sustainable point of view. And a great example they've used is kind of virtual fitting rooms. So, you're not shipping products out to people. They can try and get their sizes as correct and right as they can before they even make the purchase. They've asked if we think that will be realistic in the near future, and what other technology you think might come up in this space. Does anybody want to take that question?
I think I'll have a go at it. I think it's really important to think about where the biggest areas of impact are within your value chain, and what's impacting the sustainability. So if I think of some of the big ones, just very roughly, it's about first of all, what you're producing the right amounts, reducing what's kind of unsold at the end and off-cut. So all of that kind of factory manufacturing accuracy, returns, so to the point of virtual fitting rooms in the middle, you know, that's definitely something that has that impact. And there are loads of really promising, be it virtual try-on applications that have, I think, really promising results in terms of the reduction in returns that they're seeing as a result of that technology. And then I think probably then that end of life, the tech that's coming along in recycling, keeping things in circulation for longer. The challenge, I think, for businesses is there are so many amazing companies and things, options available to solve all of these different problems. It's where do you go first? Where do you invest first? There is inevitably going to be a roadmap there. So kind of, I think taking that 80-20 rule of, okay, where is that impact coming from in my value chain and what will I therefore go after first, is really important. And I think sometimes it's not always about the really sexy stuff you do for the customer. That's really important and you want to make that an amazing experience. But so much of what we've talked about today is actually fairly boring. It's about really building foundational building blocks, transforming how your business works, which isn't very sexy, but ultimately is going to drive a lot of change.
Yeah, I think if I can add a kind of specific example on how it, you know, something that we've used at Pangaia and actually launched last year was a 3D printed shoe that is mono-material. So traditionally shoes are made out of like 30 to 40 materials, depending on the type of shoe, especially sneakers. Instead, we worked with a company called Zellerfeld, a German company, to create a 3D printed shoe that's made out of just one material, which has huge implications as it pertains to end of life and recycling. But to the point about kind of digital tools, this is actually a product that is custom fit to your foot. So you take a scan of your foot using your phone to create a 3D scan and render, and then this product is made specifically to you. So the fit is perfect again. So if we're thinking about reducing returns and creating that kind of custom fit product for a customer, that's one such example that we've been doing, and we're thinking about future ways as well that we can create that kind of personalized approach through digital tools.
Thank you. There's a question from someone in the audience around we spoke a lot about data and standardization and kind of proving things, measuring things, but how is impact always measurable? You may make a change, but the impact it has on the business or the positive impact it has on the environment may not always be, you can't take a percentage or you can't grade it or rate it, how good or bad this has been. How do you deal with those things in your businesses that you can't say, well, this has made this much difference, but it has made a difference? Does anybody want to take that one? Rory, I'm going to point to you.
Okay, yeah, I think our approach to data really as in this way is kind of combining very quantifiable data. So for example, we have an LCA program where we measure the environmental footprint of our materials and products in like very tangible, objective, empirical, across metrics of like greenhouse gas emissions, water usage, toxicity, etc. But then when you kind of take a step further and you're thinking about kind of engaging in supply chains, right? And it's very contextually specific. It's in a certain region where you're looking at, for example, the cultivation of wildflowers for our down jackets that you referenced. There's lots of like nuance and specificity in those supply chains that can't necessarily be captured in data and empirical data like that. So we also place a huge amount of value and importance on kind of doing that more like qualitative due diligence and understanding our supply chain and engaging in our supply chains in that way. And then to come with like both of those to create the most informed decision when it comes to making these decisions within the business. So I think both are very important in all honesty.
Thank you, Rory. Ella, somebody has highlighted that Selfridges should be congratulated for their repair and refurbishment work, which I agree with. But do you have any advice on how this can be adopted by the broader industry? Any tips on repair and refurbishment?
Yeah, absolutely. There's actually an amazing campaign that was announced last week by our partner Sojo. So they are calling for a kind of nationwide, I guess, collaboration across repair to really drive that both with customers, etc. And we've also mentioned legislation. You know, you look at, I'm going to take France again as an example, but some of the legislation that they're bringing in around repair, and then also the support financially that they're bringing in to really try and encourage that is so fantastic to see. So I think repair is something that has huge opportunity. I'll touch on, there's another question there around that Shein and that the Temu, and I think there's a real tension there, because if you think about repair, the way customers are really blocked in terms of something has to be worth repairing. If it's going to be 35, 40 pounds to resole your shoes, but you only spent 25 pounds on those shoes, it's going to be very hard to change the customer's behavior. Or if your t-shirt only cost you £2, going to the effort of having it repaired, etc., and paying for a repair that's going to be more expensive, is a really hard customer shift. And so really starting to think about the value of your items, the longevity of them, is going to be a really key thing. And yeah, really hope that we'll see kind of governmental support, be that in removing VAT for repair, which again is one of the things that this campaign is kind of calling for, to really try and spearhead and accelerate the flywheel of keeping things in the loop.
Thank you. Rory, you're nodding. I feel like you have a view on this.
No, I totally agree. I think that it's about creating a value on the item so that you feel like an emotional attachment to your item, so you feel compelled to repair it. And then I think, you know, it's the industry's job to promote and educate people on the importance of repair and create these partnerships, for example, Selfridges with Sojo, to enable and make that as easy for customers as possible.
Well, it seems we are just out of time, but that was such an interesting conversation, and I thank all three of you for sharing some great insights and great advice that hopefully our audience will take away. So thank you to our panel. Thank you, of course, to Jor, and thank you to everyone watching live. We'll see you on the next one. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.